Deesha Philyaw.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to the RuggedAngel Cast.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to talk to you.
Hey.
We haven't known each other very long.
Nope.
But we have shared a stage.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
So,
that was memorable.
Yes, very much so. A wonderful event with Miss Vanessa German, and a great introspective on just female Black creativity, and I loved it.
Yes.
Absolutely loved it. And so at that moment, I decided, I had to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I was there rabble-rousing, and some good came of it.
Yes. How's your day going so far?
My day has been great. I started my day teaching a flash nonfiction workshop to some teenagers, working with Jason Mendez and through a fellowship that he's doing in Bloomfield, Garfield area. I believe the fellowship is through Ace Hotel, but I don't want to misspeak. But it's 3 weeks he's working with the students, and he has a roster of local writers and some folks from out of town coming in to work with the students. So they're really getting a great writing education.
Nice. I don't want to misspeak, but I'm not 100% sure. What is flash fiction?
Well, the workshop was flash nonfiction, but flash is sort of how it sounds: quick, short. Some people call it microfiction, mini fiction. It has a million names, but and as many definitions in terms of what makes it short. So the one I think most people can agree on is less than 1,000 words. A site that I have published some flash nonfiction on, Brevity, their word count is 750 words or less. Okay. And then I have some work coming out on another flash nonfiction site called Dead Housekeeping. So deadhousekeeping.com. It's a site where people write about the domestic lessons we've learned from the dearly departed.
Interesting.
And I'm probably not doing it justice. They
so
have
it's
a
like
nice,
our personal dearly departed, like.
Well, yes, somebody who has passed away and sort of what they taught you in the domestic realm. Okay. And I'm probably not doing it justice. They have a nice definition on their website. But what I'm contributing are 3 short pieces, each around 250 words, about my mother who passed away in 2005. Okay. And one of them is called How to Be a Good Party Guest by My Mother. And my mother would go to parties and would go early to help. These are air quotes, help, which meant to make things the way she wanted them, even if
I love it.
So I wrote about the one time she went to this party and was somebody's wedding reception at a house. And I'm asking her, how was it? I want to hear about the bride, the groom. She was like, oh, they didn't have mints and nuts. She left and she drove to the pharmacy or, Ecker Drugs or whatever, and got mints and nuts because there was just a way you had to do things. Wow. And
I don't think I've ever made that correlation with part.
So that was my mother. Another one was on how to make potato salad. This is, you can't eat just anybody's potato salad. No. And that's, and my mother really believed that. And there was only one person who she would eat, and that's the person who taught her. Mm-hmm. And so my mother was the person people would often ask to bring the potato salad. And even if they didn't ask her, as you can imagine, she brought it anyway. So there was that. And then I wrote a third piece on
my own. It's fine.
Exactly. How to make spaghetti, and how we got into an argument one time about, do you make it with the sauce all mixed up, which is how she always made it. And then I had the nerve to go off to college and, have my sauce and my pasta separate. And I actually preferred it that way. And so, yeah.
Now, why is it you prefer it that way?
Because you can control the sauce to pasta ratio. And you can imagine my mother's reaction when I told her that. She was like, girl, you can eat this or starve. So anyway, that's an example of flash nonfiction. Okay. Brevity magazine is another good example. They have pieces on all sorts of topics. And But it's just this idea of writing about a moment, and often it's, you know, more than one moment, depending on how much space how many, you know, words you have to work with. But as I told the students that I was working with this morning, it's starting with what Anne Lamott calls a 1-inch picture frame. And she talks about this, not about Flash, but just about writing in general, like, you know, talking about how do you get started. And instead of like, you've got, you know, we've all got these big stories, but just what can you see in 1-inch picture frame? You know, you might just see your grandmother and that scar on her arm or something like that, and then you can kind of expand, you know, what is outside of the 1 inch, what happened before, what happened after.
That is a wonderful way to think about it.
Yeah, so you just, you know, start with an image. So one of the pieces that the students and I read today started, you know, some great line like, you know, my grandmother had a bathing suit, but she never wore it. You know, so immediately you're in the scene with the grandmother. It turns out they're at a pool party for that the church is having. And so then you learn about the grandmother, you learn about the boys who are there and the girls who are there. And so, you know, you start with this single image usually, or single idea, and then kind of expand from there. But within the confines of this very limited word count, and you're trying to tell something cohesive. And it's a great form for me because I'm really wordy. I'm sure you are shocked to hear that.
Writer?
I know. And, but it, you know, I like the discipline of it. I like the challenge of it. So, you know, we did some reading today, and then we did some writing, and I started writing something about how my father would cook for me every Sunday morning when my mother was dying. So again, that 1 inch, you know, it was just that plate of food. Right. And then we kind of went into, you know, different places, but, you know, very, very concise. So I did that this morning, and then I had lunch with a young woman who is a Yale undergraduate, and that's my alma mater, and she's here in town doing an internship in journalism at the Post-Gazette. So we finally got together and, you know, swap stories about Yale now versus Yale then. You know, there's a lot going on campus this year. So she was kind of in the belly of the beast. And we talked about that. Talked about writing. And
is this kind of like an unofficial mentorship?
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of mentoring?
Unofficially. Unofficially. You know, because I'm self-taught. I don't have an MFA. I don't have any degrees in writing, English, communication. You know, I have degrees in other subjects, in economics, and I have a master's in teaching. So I've just learned from people who were kind enough to mentor me and to edit me, you know, formally and informally. So, you know, I can't, you know, pass up the opportunity when someone asks me, you know, can you look at this, you know, or
no, I mean, it's part of the whole process of giving back, basically, and kind of to help nurture the younger generations, or, you know, just other women or other people that, because I mean, we can't take it all. We can't do it everything. So let's rewind a little bit.
Sure.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, Duval.
And what was Jacksonville, Florida like?
Oh man, when I was growing up there, I was born in 1971, so I was there the first 18 years of my life. Okay. It was not a very diverse place. It was black, white. Okay. And, you know, growing up, people would kind of fall into one of three categories: black, white, foreign. Now, of course, you know, if you weren't black or white, you weren't necessarily foreign to the U.S. Exactly. But that's how our world was divided. I was bused to school. I lived in a black neighborhood, but went to elementary school on a bus that, you know, went to an all-white neighborhood. Okay. So that was something.
What was that experience like for you?
I love school. And so the racial dynamic was kind of lost on me a little bit. And I think it's not like I was the only black student, but, you know, everybody in my neighborhood, we all went together, you know, to this other side of town.
So it wasn't necessarily being dropped into like some foreign place.
Not really, because you know, kind of strength in numbers or whatever. And generally I had good experiences in school. You know, there were some, outlying experiences that weren't great, but for the most part, you know, school was something I look forward to. I did well in school. But then when I got to 7th grade, I went to a high school, that junior and senior high school together, that was actually in my neighborhood and was the school that my mother and aunts and uncles and, all the black folks had gone to for many years. It was a kind of a historic school that had been shut down. And as is happening again now, that school was opened up and turned into a magnet school. And students from all over the city came. So it went from, back when my mother was going there, and even, older generations, it was all black, but then suddenly it was, mixed. But still, black students were in the minority there. So in a graduating class of a little over 100, I'd say, a little more than 10% was African American. So Jacksonville for me, it was really small. I couldn't wait to leave. I really wanted to leave. I read a lot, and so I knew that there was a whole world out there that was bigger and more interesting and held more opportunity than what I was experiencing in Jacksonville, and I just couldn't wait to explore that.
Right. Was there some place in particular you had in mind that you were set to move off to?
No, just I didn't zero in on a particular place, but I knew that I didn't want to stay there. And then my junior in high school, I had a chance to go be a congressional page. In Washington, D.C., and so I stayed in the Page dorm with kids from all over the U.S. So that was a real pivotal moment in terms of, I got to get out of Jacksonville. I want, this is what I want. I want to have these really, these friendships with people who like the kinds of things that I like. Because I stayed in the same neighborhood my whole life, and so when I started going to the college prep magnet school, nobody else from my neighborhood went but me.
Oh.
And so I kind of had these two worlds, and so where would I belong? I didn't necessarily want to stay in my neighborhood. I wanted to move beyond there, but, other places in Jacksonville, it's the neighborhoods didn't have character like they do here in Pittsburgh. Jacksonville's really big. Duval County is the largest geographic, municipal area in the U.S. So this idea of I'm here and then if I cross the street from Swissvale to Pittsburgh, I didn't understand that concept.
It took me like a couple of years before I got that whole thing, because it's not like that at all back home. And
it was, in Jacksonville, you drive for 30 minutes, you're still in Jacksonville, right? And there was the beach and all of that, but there weren't these sort of neighborhoods. That's one of the things I really do appreciate about Pittsburgh, even though Pittsburgh certainly has its issues, and some of that clannishness is a problem.
Yep.
Clannish with a C.
Yes. Like clickish.
Yes. But the neighborhoods do have character. I knew that the arts, I would find folks in the arts in the East, and things like that. Whereas, at least when I lived in Jacksonville, that I wasn't aware of those kinds of spaces, and so I wanted to be done with a whole city and be somewhere else, and I didn't really, I didn't specifically know where. I did kind of romanticize Harlem because I read a lot of James Baldwin.
Right.
And so when I got to Harlem for the first time in 1989, and it was not, James Baldwin era. I mean, even though when he was writing about it, it was, it was problematic, but I guess I don't know what I expected. I mean, I knew, but it was knowing and seeing are two different things. Yeah. So that kind of went out the window, but I was always fascinated with the Harlem Renaissance era and just, which is, a whole other, world. And that was not, of course, the Harlem of 1989. I took a lot of French. I took French for 4 years in high school, so there was part of me that wanted to, go to Paris and see what that would be about, but I didn't do that. So I never focused in on a place. I just knew that I wanted out of Jacksonville. Yeah.
Elsewhere.
Yes, elsewhere.
Did you always know? Well, obviously you didn't study. You didn't do any writing in Yale or whatnot, but was there always that part of you that wanted to be a writer?
There was the creative part, writing, anything having to do with words, reading. I read voraciously. I liked to play school. I liked to teach. Even when I was little, I would teach my dolls, and I would have like a class list, and who lived with their grandmother and who was like a problem student and didn't work. Like I created these worlds.
You went in.
I did. I created these worlds for these students, and then part of that is being an only child. So that was how I occupied myself. But being a first generation college student and, you know, coming from where I came from, the idea was, it's, you know, we kind of came full circle. There was a time where being a teacher was so revered in our community. And then, but the message I got was, you can't just be a teacher, you know. And ultimately I did become an elementary school teacher after I graduated and hated my first job. And I remember telling my mom I was going back to get my master's in teaching. And she was like, so you can be a principal, right? And I was like, no, I hadn't even really thought about it. But that's how far we had come, that, you know, this idea was, you don't, you know, teaching wasn't something you would aspire to. And certainly, you know, there was an expectation that because I had a Yale degree that I was supposed to do something more or whatever that was. So the idea of writing, you know, that was even less of a real, you know, occupation. And that's another reason why I think it's really important to give time to young people who aspire to that, so that they can hear from people who can affirm that this is something you can do with your life. Right. You know, this is valid. This is important work. Because that's not, you know, what I heard. It just wasn't even on my radar. So I didn't start writing until I was in my late 20s.
Really?
As a stay-at-home mom. And the stories were just there.
Oh, I'm sure.
I wasn't necessarily getting. Well, at the time, just one, and then my daughters are 5 years apart. And I didn't have an outlet. You know, I wasn't doing something else. I was a stay-at-home mom, and that's what I did. But you know, my brain, and you know, I needed intellectual stimulation, and so I had a parenting community and then a writing community that was virtual for the most part. And so a lot of my early writing was through online publications.
Is that where co-parenting 101 kind of came about?
That was kind of a fast forward. So I guess if I started writing in like 2002, just getting some things out, not published, but, you know, writing, but like it really kicked off in like 2004. I started writing a monthly column for this site called Literary Mama. And that was sort of sparked everything.
Would that have been your first published?
The first real kind of thing. And I stumbled into that because really what I was working on was a novel and like short stories and stuff like that I was sending out, and everything was getting rejected. And then I was on this listserv that was sending out like writing opportunities, and I saw one for a columnist at Literary Mama, and that's, you know, personal essay. And I thought, I can do that. And so it wasn't fiction, but I started doing that, and that got me into personal essay writing and nonfiction and into print magazines after that. So that evolved over the span, I guess, from like 2004 till around 2008. And in that time, I got divorced, and my ex-husband actually had the idea for the co-parenting stuff because, you know, he knew that I was a writer, and he's like, you should write a book about co-parenting, because people are always like, complimenting us and congratulating us on, you know, getting along and putting our kids first. And people would say, oh, you know, you guys should just write a book. And they'd hear all these horror stories about people who were just, you know, not really doing right by their kids and things like that. And I said, you know, I think it would be more compelling if we did it together. And oh, by the way, I don't know how you go about, you know, writing a nonfiction book. I'm over here trying to write this novel. So I learned that, you know, to write nonfiction, if you want to get it traditionally published, you need to have a platform. And so having a blog at that time was a big way to sort of establish a platform and establish an audience and a market for your book. So we just sort of built that website, coparenting101.org, and then we hooked up with a friend of mine who was doing a black co-parenting website specifically for African American co-parents, and she was like, we should do a show on Blog Talk Radio. And for several years we did a weekly show. I'm still shocked that we pulled it off weekly. And we had like guests on, like experts, like therapists and lawyers and anybody involved in co-parenting and divorce issues. We also had just co-parents on. You know, we would have the show on about step parents or dating or, you know, just different stories around co-parenting. You know, we had someone on who had edited an anthology about women who left their marriages to men for other women. Dear John, I Love Jane. So we had her on. We had people talking about co-parenting with someone who's incarcerated. So,
wow, this is just like, this is a really deep well of topics and information. I'm not being a parent. I guess it was never crossed my mind. Stuff like that. That's wow.
And that all became like fodder for the book, which, we started the website in 2008, started the radio show in 2009, and the book came out in 2013. So
that's wow. It's just something so simple, not really simple, but just your life, basically. And just you dealing with just everyday things that you have to deal with in order to make your life work.
Yep. And hearing from other people, because we figured, my ex and I got along, and so nobody really wanted to hear so much about that.
What about the ones who don't get along?
And so, some people would reach out and thank us for being, inspirational and aspirational. But mostly people wanted to help with problem solving. They wanted to hear, well, how did somebody deal with an ex who did this, or what if. So we tried to tell other people's stories as well. So our book has a lot of practical advice in it, but also a lot of anecdotes from other people.
What's the name of the book again?
Co-parenting 101, helping your kids thrive in 2 households after divorce. So.
And now, are there other books that are coming along the way?
I hope novels.
You're still trying to get in there.
I really started all of this to tell stories that were not true.
So mostly, as your writing has been all mostly nonfiction.
Mostly, I mean, I've thankful to the Advancing the Black Arts grant from the Pittsburgh Foundation and Heinz Endowments that I've gotten twice to work towards finishing this novel.
Oh, congratulations!
But, to generate income, though, I've mostly been writing in terms of personal essays, fiction, reportage, and book reviews and things like that. And I also, do things for clients. Anything people need written. I've worked for a museum and for a municipality, and
How do you manage the time of? I mean, I know I get asked this question a lot, and a lot of times I don't know how to answer it. But how do you manage the time in splitting so many different subjects, so much different subject matter? And your deadlines, and
it doesn't work well. I mean, what ends up happening is the novel doesn't get done.
I'm not gonna lie to you.
The novel doesn't get done. It's hard because you have to do what pays, and in theory, you're buying time. You're doing the paid work, and that somehow that's going to be like, okay, now that these bills are paid, then I can go off and write this fiction. But it doesn't always.
Because there's always a bill that's going to need to be paid.
You're always working, and so this coming week, as I mentioned to you, pressing pause for a week and going away and just working on the novel. I've given all of my clients and all the freelance stuff a heads up. During this week, I'm not doing anything else.
And you have to do that at times. You just have to, because of your personal passions will get pushed back.
They will.
Yes, you are doing what you love, but still, there's always something there that that you want to do for you. Is there a specific genre that you can say what this novel's going to be about?
I mean, I hope it's literary, but it might be like, chick lit literary. Not everybody likes that term. I don't have a problem with it. And I should also mention I got a fellowship through Kimbilio Center for African American Fiction, which is through Southern Methodist University. And they do a retreat for a week every summer in Taos, New Mexico. And I did go to that last year, and over the next few years, I can go 2 more times.
Nice.
And it's tuition free. You just have to get there. And so it's taking those opportunities and setting aside that time and saying, okay, I'm going to commit to this. So I may not be able to do it, every day, but but also too, depending on, there's some publications that pay a lot, and so you can sell one article and that buys you a little free time, and then there are others that are like smaller amounts. So it's fragmented, and that's really hard. That's probably one of the biggest challenges I have with trying to work on a novel is that it's these fits and starts. And
then it's also being a mom as well.
Yeah, it's not like this is all I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a lot. So I commend you for being able to do that.
Thank you.
So You just have the 2 girls?
And I have 2 bonus daughters. So I'm remarried.
Oh, okay.
And I married a co-parenting dad. So we each have 2 daughters. So,
it's like a little Brady Bunch kind of thing. So it's a house full of women.
Well, and see, I'm such a weirdo. My marriage is long distance because my husband works for the federal government. So he's in the DMV area, and he co-parents, I co-parent. Neither of us was going to leave our kids, and so we dated long distance, and then we're like, we can keep this up, and we got married. So
that's like what, a 4-hour?
It's a 4-hour drive. Yeah.
How does that work for you? I mean, I'm sorry. Like
you're like
how often? Okay,
right.
Let's get a more solid question here. How often do you 2 see each other?
It varies. When the girls were younger, so let's see, we got married in 2010. So we've been married 6 years, and we dated like 3 years or so before that. So when they were younger, because like the oldest girl now, his oldest daughter is 20. So she was like, I guess 9 or so when we first met, 10, 11. She was young. But the kids it was like you go to school, and I had my co-parenting schedule and he had his, and we aligned them, and so we had kids the same weekends, and then we didn't have kids the same weekends. So before our kids were introduced into our relationship, our kid-free weekends, we would just be together.
Gotcha.
And either he would come here, I would go there, we would take turns. And then once the kids were in the mix, then we could mix in some of those other weekends, and the kids could actually be together, and then we could do some holidays and long weekends and things like that. But then when kids started doing soccer and swimming, and then it became, okay, well, I have to be here this weekend because or whatever. So it was like, well, while she has swim season, I'll come there more. And then when mine has soccer season, you'll come here more, so.
Wow, your life is just a series of schedules.
Yeah. And then they get older and they get jobs. And so it's like, which we hadn't thought about that at all, So now it's just, there's no set schedule. We just sort of look ahead and go, say, when's the next time we're going to see each other, and sort of, make it happen.
Are they all like teenagers or over?
12 to 20. Everybody in the next few months, everybody's going to have a birthday. So everybody will get a year older. So in the next 6 months, they'll all.
Wow. Yeah. You are like a superwoman. I totally admire you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
But I don't feel like a superwoman. I feel, like I said, I feel very fragmented. I do not recommend, don't try this at home. I wish there wasn't all of this, going on. It would be nice to have, one job, one thing that I get to work on. But, that's kind of a luxury.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, I've a lot of times creatives don't really have that to be able to do just that mentality of being able to, like, yes, I just have the one job, 40 hours a week. Yeah. And I come home and I chill out. And that's it. I have many times I've just wished, like, I wish I could just be that person, that I could just do that and be totally content.
Yeah.
But
I think about, friends who are writers who are like professors. They, it's not before, they're not working 9 to 5 every day, but they still have, this obligation, at least during the school year. And then they have to really be disciplined about their time when they're not working to do their own creative work. So it's similar. So I would actually like a single job, that was very finite, and then I knew what my time would be, as opposed to, chasing, this freelance thing, and, and having to work weekends and whatever. But the discipline and sort of the regularity of that appeals, does appeal to me, as long as there was still time to write. That's the tricky part. That's the tricky part.
So you're doing currently, you contributing editor for Maximum Middle Age.
Yes. Yes. So the vertical is called Back in the Day. So it's pop culture from back in the day, but also some pop culture musings on pop culture, current pop culture.
Right.
So,
which I completely enjoy. Like the whole website, the whole idea for the website is basically grown women talking about grown women things.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
like the whole VHS and chill.
Yes.
Like it's just, it's a great site, and I would highly recommend you guys to check it out. MaximumMiddleAge.com.
Hey.
Which, it's a different time. I turned 40 in February, and it's like, I don't think of it in a negative way whatsoever, but I feel more permission to be like, nah, I don't want to go hang out.
To say no, and no totally is a complete
fine.
sentence.
Exactly.
And...
Nope. But what? No. It's just, that's fine. But thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested and excited to see as to, it's been a long journey of figuring out who I am.
Good.
And it's gotten to a nice place now. And yeah.
And you know the value of your time and the value of your talent.
Exactly. And it's just, and it shocks me sometimes where a lot more so, because my mother's a very strong woman where she's always been like, no, she speaks her mind. And it shocks me when I do it every so often. It's like, oh, okay.
Pop my collar.
Exactly. All right. That's right. I said it. So what haven't you done yet that you want to do?
Finish the novel. And then write some more novels. But also, there's this short story collection that's been creeping.
Really?
And I've already titled it, and I've written most of the introduction, and I've started working on some stories, and it's called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies.
Ooh.
And I just have this real fascination with church ladies. And, I think part of it is the Southern church upbringing. And I told you about this essay that I hope will be in the Undefeated about Prince and Purple Rain and the anniversary of Purple Rain. And one of the things I said in there is that, part of coming of age for me was this question, and like for everybody, who am I going to be? And on the one hand, there were all the hormones and all of the burgeoning sexuality, and certainly, Prince kind of, fed directly into that. I'm
pretty sure he's helped a lot of people in the coming of
Darling
age.
Nikki.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Exactly.
And then and then on the other hand,
I think I came of age a little early because of
Prince, right? Like I said, I wasn't even 13. And then on the other hand, I had these models of women at church. And I felt like there was such a chasm, a divide between, the women who were in church and had these urges and who dressed a certain way and who smoked and wore tight jeans and partied and seemed like a lot of fun. And then what you were supposed to be, which were, in the church world, more prim and reserved and respectable.
Right.
And, but, to me, those women, I was like, well, they have children, so they must have had sex. And I would sit in church and look at them and just do they like sex?
What was it like?
Yeah,
you just had sex with 3 times for the 3 children?
Exactly. Or wondering what were they like as teenagers, because I had this very, this binary of what was allowed in terms of being a woman, being a good girl, what that meant. And actually the novel that is in progress is called Good Girl Anonymous. So it plays with some of that. And the main character is a preacher's wife, a very unlikely preacher's wife. And I realized there was this preacher's wife in the novel and then these other stories. And I was like, I keep writing about these church ladies. They're not all preacher's wives, but they're all women who have some connection to the church. And so I've just long had this fascination, and but didn't notice it until recently. And I thought, what if I got really intentional about this series of stories and had these women who are different generations, different eras. The stories would be set in different eras, but they would all belong to the same church or have some connection to the same church, just at different times, spanning different decades. And then, tell different stories about them and about the people in their lives. So I've done 2 stories. I think I finished 2 stories in that collection. There's one that I'm editing right now that
this is
I hope
exciting.
to send out about a murderous 14-year-old. So,
oh my God,
her grandmother's the church lady in this one.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what does your research look like for this?
Not a lot about murder, but
you're just going into random churches and just spot and sitting through and watching.
It's in my head. Okay. I grew up in the church all the time. What was interesting is that my mother and my grandmother, who raised me, the 2 of them, they would send me to church, but they didn't go to church. So that was a whole other.
That was a mixed bag.
Yeah. So I have sat through many sermons and many Sunday school lesson and choir. And even, for a time in my adulthood, went to church as well. So I have a lot of it still up here in terms of church culture. And that's what, those voices are very strong for me. Those messages are very strong. and so I've find myself kind of drawing on it. But for this story Jael, it's the story in the Bible as a woman who in sort of an invading enemy army, their captain comes and seeks respite in her home, and she acts as if she's going to give him refuge, and he asks for water and she gives him milk, and he is sated and he goes to sleep, and she drives a nail through his head and nails him to the floor.
Actually,
so, that story?
Was
Deborah's song.
I want to name my first daughter Yael.
Yeah. Did I say it right? Is it Yael or Jael?
It's Yael. I think it might be, but I've seen it spelled as Yael, Y-A-E-L.
So this girl, her grandmother would pronounce it Jael because they have a family tradition where the oldest woman in the family just, touches a page in the Bible until she gets close to the name of a woman, and that's how they've named all of the women in their family. And it's this freaky, weird family of 7 generations of all women.
Wow.
And so, they marry men who kind of come and go, but they keep giving birth to girls. So she picks the name, and being from where she's from, it would be Jael. That's how she would pronounce it. So
so please keep me in the loop.
So that's who you want to name your child?
It was like, I heard the name once. I think there was like a singer several years ago. I heard, I was like, oh, that's a nice name, and I like did the research for it, and I was like, yeah, sure,
nailing dudes to the floor.
I was like, yeah.
It's just something about that line. He asked for water, she gave him cream.
Right.
So it was really like, I don't know. It's something about that. But then to turn around and murder him. So I think it's the Song of Deborah. She sings the story.
I think you're right.
Of Jael.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So what is your self-care routine?
Oh gosh.
How do you make sure that
non-existent?
Oh.
What it should be is sleep and water.
Right.
So when I'm at my best, I drink a lot of water and I go to bed. So that doesn't, because even times when I'm not on the deadline, I love to read, and so I'll just stay up and read, or I'll get something in my head in terms of a story, and I'm like, oh, I gotta write that down before, because I'm older than you, I'll be 45 in September. I don't remember anything, and so then I'll say, oh, I'm just gonna write this little phrase down or whatever. And then
it
next thing I know,
very quickly.
Yeah, and so then I'm up. But that's also part of getting older, is just your sleep habits change and all of that. So, but
which
I think
weird.
I know it's bizarre.
My mom, she can't sleep. Like, she doesn't go to bed. She goes to bed late and then wakes up
right
early, super early. And I was like, what's happening?
So, and another part of it that I'm better at, though, is what you said earlier, is just saying no and just letting people deal with that, and not feeling so responsible for people all the time like I used to. Like, I feel like I used to feel responsible for people's disappointment or people's expectations and all of that, and in addition to juggling my own stuff. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm giving people a lot more thought and regard than they're giving me. And so I think that's self-care too, is
absolutely. It's very empowering to finally find that center in yourself. You're just like, you know what? I don't need to do everything. I don't need to do all the things for other people.
Or all the contorting, to inconvenience myself or to be, unhappy just to keep somebody else from experiencing disappointment. And it's like, why am I doing that? And the best advice I got was from a friend and mentor who's about 11 years older than me. And she just said, the challenge is never be anywhere you don't want to be. She's like, short of someone that you love, dying or being near death, don't be anywhere and at the time I was a stay-at-home mom, and it was like all these play dates and all this stuff. And then in addition to the play dates, then the moms would want to get together. And the honest truth was, I didn't always want to do that, but I felt like you can't tell someone, I don't want to hang out with you, but that was the truth. And so I was doing a lot of things out of obligation. And so then when she gave me that challenge, I started with that, just not saying yes just because I felt like it, because someone had asked me to do something. And then when you're struggling to find time to write, there's like, I could go do this thing that someone really wants me to do. or I could be doing my own writing. And so just flipping that switch and saying, you know, this time is precious. It is so precious that, you know, I have to say no. So. Yeah.
And it's time for the section I like to call questionable conversation.
Yay.
Or just ask a bunch of random questions. And it's not a speed thing, so don't feel rushed. Slow it down. All right. What album can you listen to from beginning to end?
Purple Rain.
Yeah. Are you usually late, early, or right on time?
Right on time.
Favorite word?
Ooh.
This must be difficult for
a
writer.
Favorite word.
Or one of.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not good at superlatives. And it has to be a single word. Maybe.
Interesting. Very interesting. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
What was your first job?
I sold shoes at Tom McCann Shoe Store.
Nice.
Gateway Mall.
Oh my goodness. Tom McCann Shoe Store. God.
Yeah.
Ooh, favorite song to sing?
To sing? Oh, my singing voice is awful. Off the top of my head, my husband and I sing Saturday Love to each other. Sherelle and Alexander O'Neal.
Yes! I love that.
Yeah.
Would you survive a zombie apocalypse?
No, they would just eat me first because I just lay right down. Yeah, I'm not going to run. I'm not. Just like fall out.
I'm tapping out. I can't. I won't.
Nope.
Do you know any jokes?
I do, but my memory is so bad. Let me think. This is the aging process. Let me think. Joke. Yeah, I won't do the like orange of God. I didn't say banana, but like seriously, like I know jokes. I just can't.
I'm not good at remember. I've maybe memorized one joke. And I still get it kind of wrong when I tell it.
Yeah, can I pass?
Yeah, you can totally pass. It's fine.
See, and watch in like a week, I'm gonna email you a joke because that's just how I am.
I thought of it. I remembered it
exactly.
Now. What is your favorite part of the human face and why?
Lips, kissing.
All right. Do you talk to yourself?
Yes.
Can you drive a stick?
Yes.
Who was your first crush?
Oh, John from Sesame Street.
The little light-skinned boy with the little...
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Soapy. Wow. I love how you just knew that right off the bat. Like, that was just immediate.
You know, not because I've been Googling him.
No, what's he
not
doing?
because he's a Tiana singer and on YouTube.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was in the military, and then he became a Tiana singer.
He's all grossed up.
Yep.
Grown man's. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can you do any accents?
They're terrible. Because I'm too self-conscious to actually just get into the accent. Right. So.
Okay.
Southern accent. I mean, that's my native tongue.
Did you work hard? Did you work on losing it, or just
no?
happened?
People think that, but I think it was immersion. So when I went to college, you just start to talk like the people around you, and I love this story that Angela Bassett tells because she's originally from Florida. She's from Tampa, and she went to Yale undergrad and drama school, I believe. And she talks about going to college and saying, "I'm finna go.
I'm finna go."
And that was me, you know.
Right.
And so when people don't know what you're talking about, or my roommates would comment because I would say, "Cut off the light." Instead of turn off the light, things like that. And so I think over time you just mimic, you know, because I was totally outnumbered. You know, there were not a lot of Southerners there, but then I would call home, and it was the same as when my Chinese American roommate called home. We didn't understand what she was saying, and they didn't understand.
Would you just slip right into it?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I have another friend like that. She's from North Carolina. And you can hear it slightly, but when she's around her family or calling, it's like it's deep.
Yeah.
Do you remember your dreams?
Not anymore. When I was younger, I did. But
really?
I don't tend to remember them.
Outside of your family, who is your oldest friend?
that I'm still in touch with? That I'm still in touch with Jenny.
How far back do you guys go?
7th grade.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I would be invisible.
See, that's what people don't think about that one.
Because with that, you can just do everything else.
You can do whatever. You can travel for free. I think that's probably my biggest thing there. You can travel for free.
Go anywhere you want. Exactly.
Have you ever solved a Rubik's Cube?
No.
You never get tired of blank.
Writing.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yes.
Describe yourself in one word. Hardworking. Thank you so much, Deesha, for being on my show.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for having a great show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed yourself.
Yes, immensely.
And where can folks find you? I know you have a lot of things out there in the interwebs.
Occasionally I'm popping off on Twitter, not as much as I used to. The co-parenting site is coparenting101.org, and that's co-parenting101.org. And if we have friends in common, I'll friend you on Facebook.
But that's only if you have friends in common, because otherwise, if you got zero friends,
danger.
Zero friends in common, why did you hit that ad?
I worry about you.
I'm too grown for randos. And, always you can find me at RuggedAngel.com and on Twitter at @the_RuggedAngel. And the show is on iTunes, Libsyn, and the musical version is on WMCK.FM internet radio on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Now remember, whatever you do, do it with passion or not at all.